This is a Gear Network production. Coming to you live from Greece, New York, from the Gear Network studios, this is Talking Wrestling. Here is your host, J.C. Money.
Paging CM Punk. Paging CM Punk. WWE may need you. With Daniel Bryan having to have neck surgery this week, the WWE is in desperate need of major babyface star power. Hello everyone and welcome to Talking Wrestling with JC Money. Of course, I'm your host, JC Money, and we have a lot to talk about this week. Obviously, the big story coming out of Raw this week is the Daniel Bryan injury, and what comes of the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. We'll touch up on that, as well as the results of the UPW show this past weekend, which featured the likes of Jeff Jarrett and Danny Doring. And we'll look forward to the upcoming Pier 6 wrestling show, which, yes, I will be a part of. I'll speak on that later, but first, I have to mention that sponsorship packages are available here on the Gear Radio Network. As our network grows, a sponsorship package ensures that your brand is promoted across all platforms. Contact us on Facebook to discuss packages. The address is facebook.com/Gear, G-E-R-E, Network. Okay, first and foremost, yes, I have agreed to terms on a short-term deal this summer with Pier 6 Wrestling. It's going to mark my first appearance in a wrestling ring at a wrestling show in 2 years and 3 months. My last appearance, of course, was in March of 2012, and the company has changed and grown tremendously in that time. In that time frame as well, I too have changed and grown tremendously. In my absence, I had surgery on my right shoulder, got married, began pursuing my degree in journalism and broadcasting, and, of course, recently had another child. Pretty significant stuff, which has kept me busy and physically out of the public eye and spotlight. I have kept an eye on it from afar. And one of the big things that has been said about me is that with some of the areas that I've spoken out against, is that if I could do it better, then I should get back in the ring and do it. Fair assessment. Typically the ones saying this are not the sharpest knives in the drawer, but it is a fair statement. There have certainly been opportunities over the past 2 years to come back, and I haven't taken any of them. So why now? Well, for one, I do miss it in a way. There are certain aspects that I do not miss, nor will I ever. But the things that you don't see, the behind-the-scenes stuff with some of my friends and brothers in the business backstage that I do. Whether it's sharing war stories, ripping on some noob, having a one-sided fart war with Gabriel Soul, or doing my Iron Sheik impersonation to the locker room, which laughs along. That is the stuff that I not only miss, but I treasure from my time in wrestling. And, cue the fart music. There you go, Soul. That one was just for you. From a story perspective, the JC Money character never really got to say goodbye and thank you to the fans and the people that helped make him who he was. Honestly, if not for these people, I might not be experimenting with the podcasting/entertainment world, because to be perfectly honest with you, I wouldn't have had the platform to develop my persona. So it'll be nice to not only see the people that helped make me, but it'll be nice to give back as well for a bit, and finally be able to tell people thank you and send the character of JC Money off right. Often I've said that I would not be against a one-off every now and then, and I stand by that, but I can't tell you that there will be another run beyond this run. I'm not sure. You know, never say never in wrestling. Obviously, I won't. But I'm not sure. You know, it's a young man's game. And while I'm young still, and the small run that I have scheduled will be happening, I still stand firm by my original statement that I will not, under any circumstances, take up a roster spot when my heart is not into making the commitment that it takes to be a pro wrestler regularly anymore. With that, I will say that my heart is 110% into this short run, and I look forward to making my return to the Pier 6 Wrestling live on Sunday, June 8th at the Italian American Community Center. I'll post show links to both my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/TheJCMoney, as well as the Gear Network Facebook page. You should come. It'll be fun. When we come back, we will talk WWE. What comes of the WWE World Heavyweight Championship? Who takes Daniel Bryan's spot while he is gone? Is it Cena again? Do they call CM Punk back? Someone new, perhaps? We will weigh on all angles when we come back. This is Talking Wrestling here on the Gear Radio Network.
Sports news and fun. This is the Gear Radio Network.
A successful product does not become a successful product without proper advertising. If you would like your show advertised here on the Gear Radio Network, rates are very, very low to start off here. Give us a shout on Facebook, facebook.com/Gear Network. Send us a message. We can work out the details. Get your brand promoted here on the Gear Radio Network.
Welcome back to Talking Wrestling, everybody, and on segment 2 here, let's talk about the big story coming out of Monday Night Raw, which is that Daniel Bryan needs neck surgery and will be out for an undisclosed amount of time. According to sources, the WWE is waiting to see how long the doctors feel he will be out for before deciding what to do with the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. The general idea is that if he is out of action for 1 to 2 months, that they will not strip him of the championship. With neck surgery, it's very hard to tell, and given the severity of the injury is not really known, it is safe to say that the decision will come by Thursday evening. Of course, we wish Daniel Bryan a very, very speedy recovery, but his style is very grounded, but part of me can't help but think that if it's the consistent use of the top rope headbutt that had something to do with it, or that triggered the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. I hate the thought of mentioning this person's name, but Chris Benoit had a neck surgery, and a lot of that was stemmed from his use of the diving headbutt. It's a beautiful move, especially when done correctly. The Dynamite Kid was the one who made the move a favorite amongst a generation of wrestling fans, and every time someone does that move, similar to how when someone does the flying elbow drop in the tribute to the Macho Man, the flying headbutt is in homage to the Dynamite Kid. Still, though, the pressure on the neck and shoulders coming from that height and landing is brutal, so I can't imagine that the headbutt to Kane off of the forklift at Extreme Rules helped any. It's terrible. Considering the story and how far he has come, it's a shame, and I for one hope he heals soon, and I for one hope he does not be stripped of the WWE Heavyweight Championship. But if he does, who takes over? Does the WWE push Cena back into the spotlight? Lately, he's been feuding with the Wyatts, and it's rumored that he's going to be feuding with Big E, so he's clearly in a stage right now where he's helping young and up-and-coming talents, but he can and likely will continue to carry the company. But as far as WWE Championships are concerned, who do they have that's a top-face challenger to the Authority? I know Roman Reigns is expected to be the guy, but right now is not the time. They still have to build him up for that. Rey Mysterio seems like he's on his way out the door. RVD is only there short term. Guys like Big E and Sheamus are over, but not as over as they would like, I imagine, as far as becoming the flag bearer of the company in their championship is concerned. So who comes in that can get the big crowd reaction that only main event guys can? Right now, I personally don't see anybody, so this begs the question, does the WWE try and reach out to CM Punk and bring him back? I know fans would like to see it, but really, does Punk himself want to? Would he? My gut's telling me no, that he seems just fine in the place he is, but from a financial aspect, man, this would be gold. Even in the short term, until Reigns is groomed and ready, this is a win-win for all parties. Punk will come back and be in the main event, WWE will get him back and make money off of marketing him, and the fans will have the satisfaction of seeing CM Punk in action, so that they can stop hijacking every WWE-related post on Facebook with hashtag #WeWantPunk. Win, win, win. What do you think? Weigh in on our Facebook page. We'd certainly like to hear from you. We'll come back and we'll have the results of this past weekend's UPW show. We'll follow that up with talking to the one and only, the incomparable Mr. One Night Stand, Steve Kruz. He will be our guest in what will be this week, segment 4, UPW results, when we come back.
You're listening to Talking Wrestling and the Gear Radio Network. Good night now.
From the Gear Network Studios, once again, JC Money.
Back again, segment 3 here, which is normally reserved for the phone interview of the week. We are using this week as a segment for the past weekend's UPW show, Anniversary Anarchy 11's results. The packed house at the Eagles Club saw 10 matches. The showcase matches saw the returning McLeod brothers defeating 2 Weird Dudes. No, seriously, that's the name of the team, 2 Weird Dudes. I haven't seen them, but I really like the name, so I'm certain I will like them when I do. Also, Spaz, Bobby DePinto, and Dewey defeated Michael McKinger, Coleman Jackson, and Super Cop Dick Justice, another one of my personal favorites. The main show kicked off with 2 Infinity and Beyond, which is Cheech and Colin Delaney, defeating the Match of the Night Lions, which consists of our buddy Mark House and your captain, Nick Ando. Ricky Reyes defeated Maximo Suave. The UPW No Limits champion, Gabriel Saint, defeated Rob Sweet, Victor Lord, and Frank the Tank Burlington in a fatal 4-way matchup. UPW Heavyweight champion Cloudy retained his championship over Coconut Jones. Triple X Ron Falco defeated Danny Doring. Sick Rick Matrix edged Brutal Bob Evans. The UPW Tag Team Champions, the Easy Riders, walked out as champions after their win over the Rock City Warriors. And finally, Hellcat, upended the King of the Mountain, Jeff Jarrett, who was accompanied by Karen Jarrett in the main event. Just announced on their Facebook page, too, the third annual Headlocks and Home Runs out of Perry, New York on August 2nd. As of now, scheduled to appear are Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, the Innovator of Violence Tommy Dreamer, Danny Doring, Shark Boy, Trent Beretta, and more, including a surprise wrestler, in which the only clue that was given was that wrestling fans will not be disappointed. I'm intrigued. More information in the weeks to come. We'll pause for our final station identification of the broadcast, and when we come back, we will have Mr. One Night Stand Steve Kruz on the horn with us, talking his career, talking wrestling with him, what he sees. This is Talking Wrestling with JC Money here on the GM Radio Entertainment Network.
Sports news and fun. This is the Gear Radio Network.
And now, your Talking Sports blurb here on the Gear Radio Network.
Breaking news into the Gear Network studios here. This is Talking Sports for Thursday, May 15th. Aaron Hernandez has been indicted for a July 2012 double murder. This is in addition to his June 2013 murder of Odin Lloyd, former football player. He's now been indicted for the July 2012 murders of Safiro Furtado and Daniel Bryan. The grand jury has concluded, based on a one-sided presentation of evidence from prosecutors, that sufficient evidence does exist to believe that Hernandez is guilty. At trial, Hernandez's interest will be represented by lawyers who can secure his acquittal merely by creating, quote, reasonable doubt regarding the prosecution's case. Hernandez now faces 3 murder charges, which will entail at least 2 high-profile trials. No trial date has been set for the killing of Odin Lloyd, and Hernandez has been jailed without bail since late last June. And in NBA news, what is Plan B for the Knicks and Phil Jackson? Steve Kerr is now the head coach of the Golden State Warriors. This was Phil Jackson's only plan, as reported. So what is Plan B? Phil Jackson is not giving up, and here are some options as per Pro Basketball Talk on NBCSports.com. Kurt Rambis, Brian Shaw, Tom Thibodeau, who is currently under contract in Chicago, and yes, Derek Fisher. Believe it or not, Derek Fisher may be considering retiring. He's been around for a very long time. He's also a natural leader, respected by other players, knows the system, and Phil Jackson trusts him from his many, many years in Los Angeles together. This will be a story to keep an eye on in the days and weeks to come. This is Talking Sports for Thursday, May 15th.
From the Gear Network studios, once again, JC Money.
Welcome back, everybody, to Talking Wrestling with JC Money here on the Gear Radio Network, and segment 4 is here. And before I get to my guest, I do want to advise that starting next week, there will be a contest. I'm going to be giving away 2 tickets to the upcoming Pier 6 Wrestling live show. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do it yet, so it's going to take me a week. But on next week's podcast, you'll find out, because I'll have an answer, and then we'll go from there. So we got a few weeks until June 8th anyways. So it gives me time. But at this time, instead of worrying about a contest, I'm worrying about what I'm going to ask my next guest, who is on the line with me right now. He, like my guest last week, needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways. He is Mr. One Night Stand, the incomparable Steve Kruz, ladies and gentlemen, has joined us on the big show here. Steve-O, how we doing?
How you doing, JC?
I'm hanging in there. So for those of us that have not heard of Mr. One Night Stand Steve Kruz, or haven't been around in a while, or haven't seen you in a long time, first of all, tell us how you got involved.
I got involved, we got to go probably 13, 14 years back. I was doing mall security up in Plattsburgh, New York, and I'd always been a fan ever since I was a kid. And there was a promoter up there, John Mahart, with North Country Championship Wrestling. He'd never run shows, but he did autograph signings. And he'd bring in some of the big names from back in the day to do signings. And my boss knew I was a wrestling fan, and this promoter had a autograph session set up with Action Demolition and Max Moon. Not the actual Max Moon. I think it was just some random old dude in the Max Moon costume. And my boss for mall security posted me there for that day because, I was a wrestling fan. He figured it'd be kind of cool, and they needed someone from security there anyway.
Okay.
So I got to know this promoter, and he had me start going over. This was in Plattsburgh, so it was across the lake from Burlington, where it was the closest real airport. So he started having me go over to the airport, pick up the wrestlers that were coming in, take them out to dinner, bring them back over to Plattsburgh. And so I kind of got to learn a little bit about the business when I was talking to those guys when we were traveling back and forth to Burlington. And then I talked to John Hart, and I had access to all the empty spaces in the mall. And we decided, it was 2010, we ran a show in one of the empty spaces, and they brought in a bunch of people for the show. I think the headline on that show was George Animal Steel.
Okay.
And it was pretty cool. You know, it was the closest I had been to it. I just did security for it. And, you know, that was my first indie show that I was a part of. I had been to a couple indie shows before that. And then a year later, I decided that I was going to go to wrestling school, and I had already gone down to Baltimore, Maryland, and checked out Bonebreakers University, and I was ready to go there. And we ran one more show right after 9/11. We called it Grapple for the Big Apple as a benefit show. And my job that weekend was to pick up Tom Brandy, South Sincere, and he was doing the Patriot that weekend. And Brandy told me about World Hurt. And he told me if I really wanted to get training from guys that were hungry, to go check out World Hurt before I left New York and went down to Baltimore. I had already quit my jobs, and I went down and I checked out World Hurt in Schenectady before I left for Baltimore, and I met with the people there, dropped my money on the dues, and moved down there, and actually was able to keep both of my jobs and just transfer, and that's when I started. It was November 2001.
November 2001 in Schenectady. I recall that because I was actually wrestling out there for the competing company at that time, and I did hear your name. Schenectady was a hotbed of wrestling back then, was it not?
Yeah, there was the two feds that were competing, and between the two of them, there was a show at least twice a month. I didn't know about the competition. I didn't know, I knew of them, but I didn't know where they were. And little did I know, like, I was told from the beginning, because I guess back in the day there was heat between Danger and Chip.
Yes.
I was told that I was not to associate with Chip or anybody from Chip's school, and I didn't know anybody, so I was brand new, so it didn't matter to me. Little did I know that, what was it called, 24/7?
Yes, 24/7 LLC.
Above my gym.
They claimed they were an LLC. I dispute that, but what do I know? But yeah, I you know, it's funny. I remember that time too, because when I went there, and our careers are somewhat parallel, because I started in January of 2000 out here in Rochester, and I made my way there to Schenectady about 2001 myself. And I can remember being pulled aside and being told, you know, those World of Hurt guys, a lot of them are a-holes, and you know, we don't want you to associate yourself with them. I was friends with a lot of the NMW guys that were going there, like Eric Everlast, Home Run Kevin Dunn at that time. You remember the Home Run gimmick? And Marty the Party Vane, you know, was friends with those guys. Jeff Starr was somebody that I looked up to, even though he was younger than me. But I believe he was there too. And I think that bridge was gapped one point in time when Jeff Starr, showed up to a 24/7 show. I spotted him during my match, and then after the match, I went up to him, shook his hand, told him who I was, told him that I admired him, and gave him a beer, and then we shot the breeze. And at that point, I was like, you know, everybody I met from World of Hurt was cool, so I was disappointed. I never got a chance to see the environment there. So what was the environment like? Because I never saw it. I only saw the 24/7 side of things.
When we ran at the school, I think it was on State Street. It was an old bowling alley. Mm-hmm. Jack Prest ran a wrestling, like a Greco-Roman wrestling school, and we kind of rented literally a corner of it, and that's where our ring was. Mm-hmm. We ran shows there once a month, and we packed 250, 300, sometimes 400 people in there, and you could only set them up on two sides of the ring, so it looked like there was a crazy amount of people there. And the locker room seemed pretty cool. I didn't really see, I was so green, you know, I was just keeping my mouth shut and, you know, doing what I was told. And I didn't really have any problems in the locker room or anything like that. And the audience was always really into it. And then when we started running in Hudson Falls at the KSC, we were running every other Friday. And we were packing probably about 200 solid, maybe 250 every other Friday in there. We never brought in names or anything like that. It was all the local talent. And the audience was always with it. And it was a good learning experience. It was a good group of guys. I think there was a lot of talent that went through there.
Oh yeah, there's a
I'm
who's
not gonna
who.
regret ever going to World of Hurt over Bone Breakers.
There's a who's who of talent that went through there. Steve Kruz joins us here on Talking Wrestling, and it's funny. I used to hear about how World of Hurt's crowds would be, and then when I think about that, 24/7's crowds when I first started used to be. I don't want to say that they were up there at World of Hurt levels because they were in that small boxing arena, in that boxing ring with that. Everybody liked to bump on the outside because the outside was softer than that crappy boxing ring they were at. But
I've been in rings like that.
But the crowds there, I recall being very into it, and towards the end of 24/7's tenure, the crowd started dwindling, and ironically enough, I'll have Chip Stetson on the show next week, so we're going to get into more detail about that next week. But as far as World of Hurt, were you there through its end?
Yes.
Okay, and what happened towards the end? Was it just a case of people losing interest, the product going stale, promoter getting sick of it? What happened?
I don't know officially. We'll put it like that. But World of Hurt was running underground. And it was around the time that the commissioner was starting to crack down. And there was an incident at one of the shows where an unnamed worker got into it with a fan and ended up laying out the fan.
Oh, I remember that.
I remember we escorted said worker out of the building and we got them the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it was going to come down.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say it ended shortly thereafter, if not that show. I can't remember exactly, but I think that was the thing that set everything into motion.
It's a shame because, like I said, World of Hurt, who's who came out of there. So it was kind of a sad thing when I heard. By that time, 24/7 I think was long gone already. At that point, the Karen Clay syndrome completely wiped that place out. But that was pretty sad. Now,
World of Hurt's running again, though. Shane Olden took it over, and they're drawing real good crowds in Whitehall at the Whitehall Athletic Club.
Oh, fantastic. I thought I heard that they were I think last I knew they were thinking about taking over, starting again. I didn't realize that they had. But
been running about 2 years, about 2 years now.
Oh, wow. They did
a reunion show on May 25th 2 years ago, and it was just supposed to be a one-shot deal. They were calling it The Boys Are Back, and they did a couple more shows that year, and now it's they're running regularly now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Bringing in, last show they had Matt Hardy. A couple shows ago they had Bret Hart.
Oh, wow.
They're bringing in some names. I mean, Hart didn't work.
Well, yeah, obviously.
But they're bringing in name talent, and they got the local homegrowns that are still there, that are still relevant, especially in that area, let alone on the Indies in the Northeast.
All right, well, that's awesome to hear.
They're pretty good.
Very glad to hear that. Hey, World of Hurt, if anybody from there is listening and you want to give your place a shout-out here, you want an interview spot, go ahead and give me a shout on the Gear Network Facebook page. Now, it's funny, early in that conversation, you mentioned something about keeping your mouth shut and doing as you're told. That seems to be a foreign concept nowadays, doesn't it?
I think a lot of the young guys, and I'm not trying to generate any heat here, not that it really matters to me anymore, I'm retired. I think a lot of the younger guys that are coming into the business right now that are training, quote-unquote training, they're not being trained the way you and I were trained.
Mm-hmm.
When I came in, you kept your mouth shut, you did what you were told, and you had to earn your spot in the school. I got the crap kicked out of me for 3 weeks solid, 4 to 5 days a week for a couple hours a night. I didn't learn how to bump. I didn't learn how to do a single move. I didn't learn anything. I got the crap kicked out of me. I got tossed around like a rag doll, and I kept coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Then they taught me how to work. And I don't think a lot of people train like that anymore. I think there's a little bit, like, they come in now, and I think they come in with this sense of entitlement and not paying their dues. I think they consider paying their dues, paying their $50 ring fee.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Whatever it is now. And I think it's not what it was when I was a student.
Yes. With me as well, and that's the thing is that, and I think a lot of that issue stems from perhaps lack of qualified trainers.
Could be.
I said the lack of qualified trainers. Did you say could be or repeat?
Could be.
Oh yes, okay.
I would agree with that.
I mean, you've got in some cases some hand-me-downs. You've got, I know there's this one place, one of my favorite places, which I won't name because you're in good graces with them, and I respect that, and I respect you. But they were having really anybody going in there giving quote-unquote seminars, and what really turned my eye was that there was, a person that was wrestling there probably like maybe no more than 2-3 years, who was a girl, and she was trying to show people how to do arm ringers or whatever. I walked in, I think it was my second to last show there, and she was doing them wrong, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And she's walking around acting like she was a 20-year vet of the business, and you got that particular type of culture happening, and I think that what you said, keeping your mouth shut and doing as you're told, especially paying your dues in the beginning, where you got the crap kicked out of you for a year before you were taught how to work, that's a lost art.
Yes, it is.
So what would you say, how do you recommend bringing that back? What do you think it'll take to bring it back?
I think they gotta narrow down the number of schools. I think when I trained, the school in New York State, you used to have a wrestling license. And to get your wrestling license, you had to be trained by a school that was recognized by the New York State Athletic Commission, and you had to get a notarized letter from 3 already licensed wrestlers saying that you met the criteria to become a licensed wrestler in New York State. Mm-hmm. I think if that was re-implemented, as much as the fees sucked, I think if that was re-implemented, it's going to cut down on some of the garbage that's out there, because if you can't get 3 licensed guys that are going to be like, yeah, I'd work this guy, and I'm vouching for him, I'm going to put my name on him so he can get his license. I think if some of the guys that are out there right now tried to do that, I don't think they'd get their license, and they wouldn't be working shows.
I completely agree 100% with you on that one. Once again, everybody, Steve Kruz joining us on the line here, talking wrestling with JC Money. And Steve, I know you're a little pressed for time. You got some ink you're getting done. Can you share what you're getting done, or is that a secret?
We're working on more of the sleeve right now. What started out as a cover-up of a cover-up has grown into the sleeve tattoo that covers the upper right quarter of my body. We got some elbow and armpit left, and I think we're doing one more piece on the chest. It's a 3-hour appointment tonight. I'm not sure exactly what we'll do. I've been going to my guy for so long, I kind of just sit in the chair and just lay there or sit there, and he just goes to town on whatever we decide to do. He freehands 90% of the stuff that's on me now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch base with you about, talk to you about, is your retirement. It kind of came sudden to those that weren't aware of what your particular situation was. Not to divulge if it's too personal. If you don't want to get into it, if it's emotional for you, I understand. Sometimes it's like that. What happened? What happened that led to the retirement? Take us down that path and how you finally came to grips with that decision.
I got a leg injury in 2000. Where are we going here? 2011. 2011? 2010, 2011, I got a leg injury. It was 2011 because I was living back in Syracuse. I'd come back from South Carolina. I got a leg injury. I took a knee to the quadricep. I went to go do a knee lift into the gut, and the guy had his knee out, and I was going full bore, and I took a knee right in the quadricep, and I thought it was going to be a Charlie horse. No big deal. I tagged out. I massaged it out. I was good to go. I finished the match. We did a battle royal later that night, and then on the ride home, by the time Stephanie and I got back to Oswego, I had to take my right foot off the pedal with my left foot because I couldn't bend my right leg.
Oh, man.
I didn't think much of it. Put a bunch of icy hat on it. I wrapped it. I went to bed. Woke up in the morning. I ended up in the emergency room because I thought I had broken my leg because I couldn't even lift my leg high enough to step over a flip-flop that was on the floor.
Good Lord.
I couldn't do any lower body or core exercises for about 2 months. I still went to the gym and did upper body, and I didn't miss any shows. And I think what finally happened is my back was probably already injured, but I was in good enough shape where the muscles were keeping everything in place. And then when my core got weak, I think the disc started to slip. And in September of 2011, I went out with a back injury, and I went into PT, and I did a bunch of physical therapy and rehabbing, and I came back. I wrestled under a hood. I mean, most people knew I was major beatings when I was doing that to get some rust off. And then I came back full bore at Living on the Edge 2012 in a tables match, Killer Steve's versus All Money is Legal. And going into that match, I didn't know if it was going to be a return or if it was going to be a retirement. And the call was literally made in the ring. And I decided I felt good. I wanted to keep going, so we kept going with it. And then October of 2012, I was lifting weights. I tweaked it again. And I knew as soon as I felt the twinge going down my leg that I had slipped the disc again. I kept working. I kept wrestling. I had a match at Ultimate Wrestling. It was me and Studley versus Shane Alden and slipping me right now, Adam Badger's brother. I can't think of the kid's name right now, and I apologize for that. Shane, I was working Shane's back, and he charged me and went to jump over me for the tag, and I caught him in a bear hug, and I felt the pinch. And I knew that I injured it even more with that match. So I finished that out, worked a couple more shows, but I knew Studley and I had a match coming up that November against Demolition, and I really wanted that match.
Right.
So I canceled all my OSPW bookings, all my In-Your-Face bookings, everything except 2CW, and that's all I did. Got through the matches. We had a double shot for 2CW in November. It was the 15th, 16th. The 15th we worked Demolition and Graham and Punt, and then the next night we were in a Survivor Series match in Binghamton, and my Jeep broke down on the way to that show, and I showed up late, like 5 minutes before the match. I was having a spasm in the back when we were supposed to be walking upstairs to get ready to go out the curtain. Finally got up, and the match was already called. You know, they told me what was going on, so it was all good. Went out, did the match, tapped out to a modified cloverleaf that Punisher had me in, and went downstairs and started changing. I didn't know at the time that was my last match. I knew it was my last match for a couple months. In December, it started to deteriorate really bad, and it started to feel like I was rubbing bone on bone in my hip.
Oh, damn.
That's what it felt like. I had a whole bunch of x-rays done, MRIs done, and they said, nope, you just got a really bad slip disc and sciatica. Okay, so I started doing PT. It wasn't working. They pulled me out of work from my day job January 6th, and they put me in full-time physical therapy. I was going like 4 days a week, and I just kept deteriorating and deteriorating. By the end of January, I was walking with a cane. It would take me about half an hour to get off the couch because I would have a spasm, and there was nothing I could do about it. We did, and then in February, my physical therapist finally, he's like, dude, I can't fix you. You got to get cut. So I set up the appointment, and I was getting a laminectomy discectomy in February, and that's where they go in, they shave out part of the bone in your spine, and they shave out part of the tendons and ligaments to make room for the disc. And when they went in there, they found, when they set the appointment for it, I knew I wasn't getting back in the ring.
Okay.
So I retired February 15th at a 2CW show in Oswego. My surgery was on February 21st. When they went in, they found that there was actually broken off pieces of disc floating around in my spinal column. So they pulled those out, did the surgery, everything went good. It lasted about a week, and I started having spasms again. They sent me in for another MRI. More disc had slipped out. And then we set up for spinal fusion of my L5S1s, pretty much the two lowest vertebrae you have. And I had that done April 2nd. And so now I got 4 big bolts in my back and a little bracket and a little cage where the disc used to be, and bone grows around that cage. So it's like, instead of having 2 separate vertebrae down there, you got 1 really big vertebrae with 4 big bolts in you. And that's pretty much what led to it. I was laid up for about a year.
Wow. That's rough. That was making my back hurt hearing that story. I seem to I recall you telling me a little bit about it, but not really getting into a lot of detail. The retirement from 2CW was pretty emotional. I felt it from here, remotely. And safe to say that you have, because of the way you were trained, because of the way you carried yourself, and because of how you did your business in the ring, you earned a lot of respect from virtually everybody. There's not one person that I've met that has or could say a bad thing about Steve Kruz. This was the case when, and I'll put this over because it symbolized something here, but one of my favorite places, UW, inducted you into their Hall of Fame. Can you take us through that process? How did that go? You can, don't be afraid to say anything about them. I know I've criticized the company in the past, but I happen to think that was a pretty cool move on their part.
Terry called me in June or July. I still wasn't working yet. I wasn't cleared to work or exercise or anything. and he asked me, I was kind of wondering, like, what he wanted, because I hadn't really heard from many people since I, hung up boots. He asked me if I could do the show, I think it was October, and I was like, I'm retired, dude, I can't work anymore. And he told me what his plan was, what he wanted to do. And say what people will about UW, about it being a shindy or whatever, they didn't pay the boy. I usually got paid there. I don't know about anybody else. I'm not trying to get heat with anybody. I usually got paid for a while. There was a while where I wasn't, but there was a while where I was. And I think that was out of somebody's personal pocket, in my opinion. But it kind of touched me that somebody thought that highly of me and thought I helped their company that much. Because I always looked at myself as I'm just another worker. I'm in another tag team. I thought the Killer Steves were a great tag team, but I was never going to call myself a great wrestler. I thought I was good, but I didn't think I was never putting myself like as the top guy anywhere that I was. So just getting that kind of recognition from a company, someone saying, hey, you helped us, we feel you helped us this much, we'd like to do this for you, that meant a lot to me. And it was kind of cool, being able to do it and kind of get that little bit of recognition.
Yeah, definitely cool on their part. And for the record, when I went to UW, I was paid too. I made sure that, though it wasn't the promoter that paid me, and I was not cool with that. So, but that's a different story.
I think you and I had the same deal, I got a feeling.
That's a different story for a different day, my man. We're all talking about good stuff here. So, Steve-O, I appreciate you giving me your time. I know you're busy and you're going to get your ink done. But before we go, I'm going to ask you: is there? I'm sure that you've been asked this a million times. I'm sure fans, longtime fans, still ask you this. I'm asking you this. I'm putting you on the spot right here on my show. Is Steve Kruz 100% done? Is there a chance for the proverbial one more match chant?
One of the things I was taught in this business is that you never say never.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie. I'm just getting back into the gym. I'm about 40 pounds heavier than I was when I was in the ring last, and it's not muscle. It would be a very long road and a tough battle to get back into shape where I would feel comfortable getting in the ring and competing, because I wouldn't be happy if I wasn't competing at the level that I was at.
Right.
Being, I was a mainstay 2CW. I was one of the originals. I was used pretty decently at OSPW. I was used pretty decently at UW, at In Your Face, pretty much everywhere we went. I'm not going to say never, but I would need to feel physically comfortable. I would want to be comfortable with who I was working with, and it would have to be right and make sense. I'm not just going to, hey, all of a sudden I'm back and just be booked on a show. There's got to be some kind of it's got to make sense. I retired. I left the boots as I was taught to, and I know my trainer's trainer also left his boots and came back. Mm-hmm. So it would just have to be right, and it would have to be the right situation, and it would have to be the right deal, because I went through a lot physically, financially, emotionally, and personally, not only myself, but my girlfriend, my family, and my professional career when I got that injury. So I'd be putting a lot on the line. I'm never going to say never, but it would have to be the right situation and the right deal.
All right. Well, I hope to see it, and if it ever happens, I will. I didn't leave my boots in the ring, so I guess, I don't believe in the retire word anyways, because nobody ever really retires unless it's an extreme circumstance, which yours can qualify for. But if it ever does happen, damn it, Steve, tackle, drop down, leapfrog. You and I never worked each other, and I'd make sure that it happened if you ever came back.
I don't even think it was in a battle royal that you and I don't think we've had anything together.
No, we're like Bret Hart and Jake Roberts, man. Been around a long time. Been around, but a long time, and it should have happened, never did. But, Steve-O, appreciate the Vine, man. Thank you so much for taking time to call, and you have an open spot anytime to call in and chit-chat with us, shoot the breeze or whatever. Appreciate you.
Good. Appreciate it.
That was Steve Kruz, everybody. Mr. One Night Stand. What a guy. One of my favorites. One of my all-time absolute favorites. And classy guy. You can't get much classier than that. Steve Kruz has earned the respect of, for
Christ's sakes, I'm talking about UW in a positive light because of Steve Kruz. That's what this dude meant, not only to me as a professional, as a friend, but just as somebody that if you are young in the business and you want to learn how to work, you want to learn how to conduct yourself, find this guy, find his stuff, watch his stuff, talk to him, pick his brains. He did it right. Love you, Steve. Appreciate the Vine as always, and you are definitely welcome, and I am going to book you on future shows in the future here on the Gear Radio Network. So, Maestro, kindly please. There we go. Thank you all very much again. Another successful week, and as I stated in the interview earlier, yes, Chip Stetson, the legendary Chip Stetson, who just celebrated his 21st birthday. Let that marinate, Chip. Chip Stetson will be joining us on Talking Wrestling with JC Money next week. I don't even know if I'm going to have a WWE segment with that guy, because that guy I can talk to for hours and pick his brain and learn something new every single time I talk to him. He's a good friend. I've got a lot of questions that I want to talk to him about, especially going back to the 24/7 days. We will touch base on that. We'll talk about the past UPW show that happened and the success that was and the success that company is. We'll talk about, Skull Wrestling Promotions, which he's a part of, and what's just going on with Chip Stetson. This would be a great podcast for all of you young aspiring wrestlers or kids that are in the business to listen to, just like this one with Steve Kruz. So, yes, next week, Chip Stetson, everybody. So, with that being said, another successful week has come to a close, and I must remind you that this is a copyrighted podcast of the Gear Radio Networks, and any rebroadcast or reproduction without the express written permission of the Gear Radio Networks or me specifically is strictly prohibited. Thank you very much, Steve Kruz. Thank you to Todd Brantley for providing the results for the UPW show on their Facebook page. I swiped those from you. Thank you to Zubarus for the intro music, and from all of us here at the Gear Radio Network, this is JC Money saying so long, everybody, and good night now.